Hey everybody, it's Marty here, and it's time for the second day. That's right, it's December 22nd. That means another video dropping from me. So, I've been racking my brain thinking about what to talk about, because much like last year, I want to talk about stuff that's really important to me, or just Christmas-related in general. And this is technically just one of those things. Now, what is that thing? Well, if you didn't know, I like comic books. I didn't read comic books as a child, at least from like ones every once in a while, you know, a Spider-Man comic here or there, Batman, whatever. That was kind of how it was for me for the most part. But there's one superhero that is my number two. If you didn't know, my number one favorite superhero of all time is Dick Grayson, the original Robin and Nightwing, and he's taken on a handful of other names, but I'll always know him as Nightwing, and I'll always call him Dick Grayson. Now, is he who I'm talking about today? No, actually. I probably should, actually, not think about it. But no, today I'm talking about another superhero that is my number two, and I will always love. That's right! The big red cheese himself, Captain Marvel. So, the funny thing is, I didn't really grow up with Captain Marvel. It was kind of more just like, I saw him, I thought it was cool that he had similar powers to Superman, but he was essentially a child. That is the basis of the whole concept. A young boy named Billy Batson, who is good-hearted and a good person in general, is given the opportunity to have great, almost godlike powers, but he is called the world's mightiest mortal. And this is the very first issue of Viz Comics. It is the very first appearance of Captain Marvel. It is the very first appearance of Billy Batson. And, well, obviously this is not one of the original ones. This is just kind of a DC reprint, and I love it. So good. But yeah, so when I did find out about Captain Marvel and I fell in love with this series, I'll be honest, I haven't read a load of the comics. What really got me into this was a DC animated movie called, I believe it was Shazam / Superman First Thunder. I think that might have been what the comic was called. I watched it, and there's one scene in particular that literally, I'm a real softie. I don't like talking about it. I don't think anybody ever wants to be seen as a softie, but I'm real softie for when something is said or a scene happens that really works. And there's one scene where Billy Batson is sitting in a diner talking to Clark Kent, and he mentions that he's been good. He's been good his entire life, and yet a lot of things have been taken away from him. He lost his parents. He doesn't have anywhere to go. He lives on the streets. He gets his ass kicked by jackasses, and he wants to keep being good, but it's hard. And Clark Kent says, evil is always easier. It's hard to be good. This isn't exactly what it says. It's just kind of my own variation on it. But it's a simple fact that good is difficult. Good is challenging. You could read any Spider-Man comic and learn that, because good is one of the best things we do, and yet at the same time is difficult, because sometimes we have to accept that we're just going to get our asses kicked being good. But in spite of that, people do it anyway, and that's what I think essentially Captain Marvel represents. That's why I love him so much, and that's why, despite not reading a whole lot of his comic books, I love the character. But I think between the two, I like Billy Batson even more, actually, because he's this kid that's had a rough life, given the opportunity to do an assload of good, and he does so. And despite the fact that Captain Marvel, the name, has been taken away from him for various reasons, and despite the fact that the original creator of Viz Comics #1 lost the rights to Captain Marvel because the comparison, I'm not going to get into it, but the point is, Captain Marvel and Billy Batson are always going to be one of my favorite superheroes of all time. God, I'm such a cornball. And as the series goes on, eventually it evolves. We see Billy has a sister named Mary. She becomes Mary Marvel, and it's really cool. She gets powers, and then there's Uncle Dudley, and then there's Freddie Freeman. If you've seen like the new Shazam movies from a couple of years ago, like you probably already know everything about it. But just, God, I love it. I really do. You could probably tell by how much I'm talking about it. But basically, I love Captain Marvel. I love Billy Batson, and I like the thought of being a good person. Yeah. So that's it for today, and I will see you on the 23rd. We're getting closer. Christmas Eve is only in a couple of days, and then Christmas Day, and much more video fun to come. So I will see you all later.